Hi, I'm Adrian Sherwood. I'm here with Music Radar and I'm here to show you a bit of how we work in the studio and to chat about a bit of history about this, that and the other, and talk about my new album, The Collapse of Everything. I first got into a studio with Prince Farai, with Fish Clark the drummer and Flabber Holt, and that was at Gooseberry Studios in Soho in about 1976. So I was 18, and the whole environment and the excitement of it becomes very addictive. So I ran my first session that year with Fish playing drums. It was maybe 77, and hired musicians in. I saved up the money and ran my first recording session. The most influential being from the fact I was from a reggae background and a big fan, with the likes of obviously Lee Perry, Augustus Pablo, King Tubby, Keith Hudson. They were the ones that were the big influence on me. But I was also very aware of, the wall of sound, Phil Spector, and the fact that everyone had their own sound, studios had their own sound, and that was very inspirational for me. I've got here lots of vintage equipment, and we've got some good effects inside the computer that Matt's done, but we're basically we've got a AMS delay, we've got some Langevin EQs for sweeping, we've got a Ninja Tune delay, a Moog Fuga, and an AMS reverb. But we've got here some vintage things, like this is a 10-head Binson here, Neutron biphase. Obviously the Langevin is a very, very rare bit of old kit. And then I've got this wonderful Grampian I got for like 50 quid years ago, and it's now like ultra collectible. But we're using things if I was engaging phasing or tape delay. But at the moment I'm literally concentrating using the AMS reverb for the big sound, the Zen for the EQ sweeping delayed warp delay. It also works very well on short things like the snare, a lot of feedback, and you can pitch the depth or amount of treble you want, and then double pat it, and it will give you this almost tripped out psychedelic type delay effect on guitars, snares, or whatever. Yeah, I made this new album. It's the first in 13 years with my name on the front cover. I think generally, I said this quite a lot lately, but I think most of the records are kind of mine anyway, but they're not really. I have to satisfy the singers and the other musicians. And on this one, by being on the front cover, it gives you more focus, more attention, and also the chance to call all the shots myself. And I'm going out of my safety zone by attempting to do this live, so be on stage with a mixing desk, all the drum parts and computer and a pad, and with three great musicians being with me, Doug Wimbish, also Alex White and Mark Bandola on stage together, to try and do something that I've not done before. Like, I've got a mixing desk on stage, but I'm going to be doing, for the first time, mixing part of the sound, and the rest of it, I'd like to have more musicians with me and try and create something like, really grandiose, but budgets don't permit that. So I've got to go with, having Dougie with me is imperative, and Alex and Mark, they live nearby and they're both fantastic and good friends. I want to have a good vibe on the road. I'd obviously like to have more of the players on it. Keith LeBlanc sadly's passed, and this album's dedicated very much to the memory of friends like Mark Stewart, who just died. And I would like to have Cello Man with us. I'd like to have maybe Chris Joyce drumming and some other people, and even my friend Crucial Tony, who's playing in the background. You hear him overdubbing the track we've just mixed. But hey, everything in due course. What we're doing first is a good way, and I've got wonderful visuals done by my friend Peter Harris to try and make something look, really multimedia, multi-dimensional, and I want it to be like a tripped out psychedelic dubstep. Well, there's been some good plugins come along, a fantastic one, Lexicon, and some other things, and some other great bits of outboard have come along. But I'm still basically using a lot of the vintage stuff I used before, but I'm using it in conjunction. There's obviously the AI thing with the RipX and the ability to almost make a ghost out of your own work. So I've been enjoying doing things where I can maybe even take this track we're working on and RipX it, ghost it, slow it down and bend the sound and experiment with the pitching and EQ sweeping and stuff. That has been a big part of the new record, as well as carrying on where I left off with the last one, using tuned percussions to make little sequential noises and try and create, a good soundtrack. I have a couple of bits that I'm a big fan of AMS, the Burnley company, the English company, and also Grampian. I love both of those. So both of them are basically on every tune I've made for 30, 40 plus years. And they've only got one sound. Well, the Grampian, for example, has only got one sound. I love plate reverb, springs like the Grampian, and I think those things are my go-to bits of kit. But you can get by with, very, very cheap equipment. If you really want to do analog mixing, you could buy something like an Eventide Space or an H9000, and they're not expensive as long as you've got a way of getting from your box, your computer, back and forth from a desk. It's really worth processing your stems using these great effects. And also if you can get your hands on like parametric equalizers and bend the sound a bit just to make it move and breathe a bit. That's what I'm a fan of doing. I think each time you work with somebody, Spoon was a challenge because it was somebody I've not done anything like that before. Very melodic, but then also Sonic Boom and Panda Bear, that's very melodic as well. And I worked on the thing with On You Sound over the years. I modelled it a bit on having a professional rhythm section. So I was lucky to work with Jamaican musicians who've been like Style Scott, part of a great rhythm section providing tracks for the great ones, also Dougie and the Sugar Hill guys. And I tried to do that again, to have my little crew. So it gives you a sonic continuity with the production, not just with the sound, which is my department, but also by having access to a pool of musicians to make it seem almost like the vintage house bands, like a poor man's Tamla or a poor man's Channel 1 or something. But no, I don't mean a poor man's at all, but that's the kind of model I vaguely use. But sadly, we're not as hit-oriented as a lot of the other people. Well, I think the influence of Jamaican music, where people say dub this, it's like I'm not a dub producer. I use the techniques of dub in my productions, be it a full song or not. But the influence, and dub derived, as I keep pointing to people, from version. The unique thing about Jamaican music is having multiple versions of one rhythm, and one of those might be a dub. But the where it's been adopted by everyone from house music to techno to whatever, and the use of the effects that were first incorporated in the Jamaican studios is now available digitally to anybody. And people realise that they can spice up their mixes and make them sound quite adventurous by using techniques that go largely back to the Jamaican producers, and their influence on hip hop and everything else is monumental. Dub is just, to me, one aspect of version, making a few versions of a great rhythm. I think by not being a musician, obviously you feel a little bit of an imposter, in some ways. But I've got a passion for it so much that a lot of the great musicians, I think, kind of respect me, because I'm not like, oh, this will be perfect, and give the freedom to everybody to let off. And I also like beautiful mistakes in the productions where it's not all perfect. And have a sense of freedom for the playing for everybody. So I think by not being a musician in some ways has helped me, because I don't see limitations, and I just want to kind of make the thing breathe and bleed and jump out the speakers at you. And that's what I do. The one bit of advice I'd give to people getting into music production is believe you're making magic. I learnt that from Lee Perry. When you go and do something, try and make it magic. Don't go and I'm going to make something today. Wait till you're feeling really, really inspired, have some ideas for some good B lines or whatever you do, or and go in and feel excited that you can make something great happen when you do it, and just do as much as you can while you feel that way.